Well, it is Thursday on Power and Politics, and that, of course, means it's time to bring in our political insiders for our great segment, Point of Order. Scott Reid and Jaime Watt. Gents, it is Thursday. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Evan.
Good to see you.
First up on the order paper, guys, WikiLeaks. It continues to make headlines around the world. Canada's ambassador to Afghanistan is offering his resignation in anticipation of more leaked diplomatic cables. Mr. Crosby's worried about a memo being made public in which he is critical of the Afghan President Hamid Karzai and his government. Question, should the ambassador's resignation be accepted? And how much damage is being caused by WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange? Scott Reid.
Well, you know, it would be a terrible, a gross injustice if the ambassador was to lose his job for doing his job. And I'm not suggesting the government is
exactly right.
making any kind of thing, but you know, his job is to actually observe operations on the ground, liaise with the government in Afghanistan, and provide candid observations, not only back home to Ottawa, but to our allies like the United States. And you know what? He's not the first cat who's made the observation that Hamid Karzai is not exactly playing, cricket with the rest of us. So I would hate to see that happen. But secondly, you know, on WikiLeaks writ large, I mean, it is really serious. A lot of the stuff is like just sort of, you know, tantalizing and fun, but some of it is very serious. When we start talking about, you know, getting a wormhole into the Iranians, and, you know, that has operational implications. We haven't seen all this stuff spilled out. I got a real big problem with this self-styled journalism. This guy is not a journalist. He's putting a lot of stuff at danger. It's obviously going to affect the future of diplomacy. And you know what? Some things do need to be done with the discretion and behind a door that's closed.
On this, we completely agree. This guy did his job, and he won't take it back because he can't take it back.
How?
Candid, accurate assessments. If we don't want ambassadors doing that, they might as well stay at Fort Pearson, read the newspaper, and scan the internet. So I think this guy did a good job. But I'm with you on the problem with this WikiLeaks thing. You know, when people don't share information, bad things happen, like 9/11.
Yeah.
That was one of the fundamental reasons that we had a security and intelligence failure in 9/11, was we didn't share information, and this guy Assange is putting us back in that place.
Although I will say,
it really tests the media. It tests the media, Evan, in terms of how they're going to handle this stuff.
It is true, although the ambassador to the U.S. ambassador to Canada said the walls may go up even though they went down post 9/11. Jaime Watt, interesting response to that. But let's keep going. Next up, the results from Monday's 3 by-elections still reverberating. The Conservatives held a seat in Manitoba and took away one from the Liberals in Vaughan, Ontario. The Liberals grabbed a seat from the NDP in Winnipeg. Question, what would you advise your respective parties about when they should force a federal election? Jaime Watt.
Well, look at Evan. I am more confused this week about Michael Ignatieff than I've ever been. I thought this dude was an academic. I thought
he said
was
your
smart.
party.
I thought,
your party.
I thought,
You're not a liberal.
I thought this guy had some
Conservative
kind of a
CQR.
logic sense. Instead, he's running about the country and saying, you know, the Conservatives just won by 1,000 votes, as though that doesn't make it legitimate. The Liberals held this riding for 22 years. They won it by tens of thousands
Julie
of votes.
Fantino was supposed to sweep in like Gabriel the Archangel.
This riding since the Berlin Wall was still standing and George Michael was straight. I mean, give me a break.
George Michael was never straight.
Give me a break.
You of all
already.
people.
You know, the bottom line is, in terms of an election, this is Groundhog Day. We keep talking about this. We're beginning to sound like Groundhog Day. Nothing in the public opinion dynamic is changing. The only thing that's changing is getting worse for the Liberals. So you know what? I'd be pretty well behaved if I were them right now.
Because I'm a respectful panelist, I'm going to address the question as it was posed by our good host, Evan.
First time.
I'll start, though, with Jack Layton. I actually think that Layton is the first leader that needs to sort of sit back and take stock, because he only got 600 votes in Vaughan. And you know what? Even if you pour no resources in, you should get something more than that. And all I'm saying is this. If I'm Layton, we lost a tough one in Winnipeg. Something really odd happened in Toronto. You got to be careful about reading general election implications into a by-election. But if I'm Layton, I don't have the luxury of not saying, what the hell happened here, and tell me it isn't going to happen elsewhere. So that's thing number one. Thing number two for Harper, he's going to force a January. You watch. January budget, we're going to be in an election. That's where he's headed.
January budget. Then that, some people are saying an early budget as opposed to that March budget. Maybe January budget forcing an election. We'll watch for that. Third topic, Julian Fantino. Former head of Ontario's provincial police is a newly minted Conservative MP. We had him on the show last night. Should we expect a cabinet shuffle to bring another law and order voice into Harper's inner circle? Scott Reid.
That would be a big mistake. Of course, he's going to put him into cabinet, but elevating him immediately into public safety would be a disastrous decision. And you know what? We saw last night on this very show exactly why. This guy is not yet schooled in politics, and don't make the assumption that just because he pulled levers in top cop positions for a long time that he's going to know how to play it. Second of all, don't put a guy in charge of something that he's done all his life. You're just asking for trouble. He has a whole host of opinions. He comes with a lot of baggage. He starts talking about hug a thug. Here's a piece of advice for Julian Fantino. Don't say the word thug on TV, okay? Not a good idea for you. You're going to find that it actually becomes a slug that appears under your name. So, do I think we're going to get a cabinet shuffle? Yes, I do. I think he's going to clear out all the cats that aren't going to run the next election because, as I said, I believe that Harper is itching for an election and he's going to provoke one this
Rule
spring.
number one about cabinet shuffles, those who don't know do talk. And those who do know don't talk. So anyone who's talking about a cabinet shuffle, anyone who knows about a cabinet, we ought to be very careful about listening to what they say. Look at Julian Fantino's win was a big breakthrough for the Prime Minister in the 905, possibly in the 416. But you got to be careful. You got to be careful what you pray for because you just might get it. So not only does he have a nice shiny new toy in Julian Fantino, he's got a big caucus who's waited a long time, some since Reform days, to get into the cabinet. I always thought that John Baird going to environment was a temporary measure. So I imagine there will be one. There will be some dominoes. But, this Prime Minister knows what every leader knows. On Cabinet Shuffle Day, you make more enemies and you disappoint more people than you make happy and you make friends.
Every
that's
tree,
what lies ahead.
every tree, every lake, and every bit of
time.
our atmosphere hopes that it's a temporary measure.
I just
that
spoke with
John
the
will be
Environment Minister, John Baird, about his trip next week to the UN Climate Change Conference in Cancun. This is what the environmentalist David Suzuki told me earlier this week.
I don't expect anything to come out of this. And I am now absolutely convinced that these kinds of meetings are doomed.
Some observers share that opinion. What's the point of even holding a conference like this? What can be accomplished? Jamie Watt.
What's the point of holding a conference without David Suzuki? What? Did David Suzuki have a bad March break experience in Cancun? Is he holding out for St. Bart's and a relay in Chateau? Like, who died and made this guy
you're calling for
king?
dramatic
I
international
could care
action?
less if David Suzuki
sorry, I don't see the T-shirt that says carbon markets
shows
are
up
me.
At this meeting or not, because that's not what's important. What's important is we move forward and we get an agreement which helps balance the need to reduce greenhouse emissions, advance the green agenda against a very important thing, which is protecting a struggling and very fragile economy. That's what John Baird is going to go to do. That's why that meeting is important. He's going to do it properly, thoughtfully, in concert with our allies, in concert with our trading partners, and in a responsible way that Canadians want. And you know what? Let David Suzuki stay home. I'm sick of him.
Holy Greenpeace, Batman. You are talking about the UN climate change process. You are listening to you talk about the importance of Cancun. Listening to you talk, listening to a conservative talk about the importance of international UN-sponsored conferences with respect to climate change is like watching a thief return to the scene of the crime. You guys have had 5 years now, and you have done zip on industrial emissions, lowering industrial emissions. John Baird's second go-around as environment minister, he has done nothing that he said that he would do on the first go-around.
Here's what close a cement plant in Canada and import dirty cement from a worse plant in China.
Okay, well now you're talking.
No good.
Now you're talking on the other side of your mouth. A moment ago you were talking about your great determination to lower emissions. Now you're saying why they can't be lowered.
I gotta put a cap on these emissions today, boys. That does it for point of order. Capping your emissions is always a technical challenge, and we'll try to find some technology in Cancun for that. But boys, another good week. We'll see you again Thursday for our next segment of Point of Order.
We'll see you later.
See you later, Evan.